Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today we are in the backyard again. So we're in the backyard again for not only, no I'm just kidding. We're in the backyard today to do the July wrap up, and I'm not gonna do my full wrap up because y'all, we have one more week left of July and I've already read 20 books, and to save us both from like me editing a 40-minute video and then y'all watching a 40-minute video, I'm going to split it up into parts. I'm going to try to keep it to just part 1 and part 2 because I don't think I'm going to reach more than like 30 books. So I'll try to do like 15 or however many. Today is actually July 24th, so there's still 7 more days of July, and I have something up my sleeve. So I first wanted to just say to please remember to check out all of your trigger warnings before any book. I read some pretty heavy books this month, and if you wanted to check any of them out, I would really strongly advise you guys to just check out any trigger warnings. And another thing, one thing that July really taught me and like everything that I read was just not to become attached to anybody that you read about, because nobody is safe. So the first book that I read in the month of July was Puck Me Secretly by Odette Stone. This is one of 4 in the Vancouver Wolves hockey series. I can't remember everything that was triggering in this book, but I will say that there was some sexual assault. It wasn't on the page, so again, always check for trigger warnings if you're interested in a book, please. I would hate for you guys to go into a book blindly and think that you're gonna enjoy it and then become really triggered by something, so again, please do check. Because even books that you wouldn't expect to have anything, they might have a sprinkle of something that could trigger you. So please go and read any trigger warnings that the author puts out about the book, or even in the reviews, the non-spoiler reviews on Goodreads. I know people will put them in some of their comments. So one thing I didn't know about Odette Stone's writing was that they're pretty much like romantic suspense books, which I've never read before, I don't think. And I went in kind of blind to this series. I only knew about 1 book in the series, but I wanted to read it in chronological order. And just know that this series of 4 books is just really some traumatic and chaotic things happen. And yeah, like you're trying to focus on the romance, but then there's like some other things that are going on, and the couple's trying to figure out what they got to do, and it's just a lot going on all the time in these books. So just be warned about that if you are interested by the little bit that I tell you about today. So Rory, one of our main characters, she's never been in love and she's never had an orgasm by any of her sexual partners. In comes Max. She meets him on a plane, which she's deathly afraid of, like being in a plane, like flying by plane, and something happens to where she thinks like her life is in danger, and she just tells him like everything about herself before she feels like she's gonna die. And one of them is that she hasn't had an orgasm. So basically they both survive this like huge traumatic event, and Max delivers and gives her what she needs. Later on, after they sleep together, Max decides that he doesn't want to give her any false expectations of like relationship, because she seems like a settled down type of girl, and apparently he's not. And he just like dips out of the hotel room without like a trace of his name, what he does, anything like that. So like it's basically a one-night stand. What they both don't know is that he is one of the new members of her dad's hockey team, the Vancouver Wolves, and she is the new like, I think, general manager in training. I forgot her exact position, but she's like basically her dad is training her to take over his position, and he owns the team. So I guess like the owner. There's tons of like secrets and past hurts that come up in this book that make it interesting, but also a little sad. The next book that I read in the same series was Home Game by Odette Stone. This was actually the book that I first heard about in someone's recommendation videos, but I couldn't not read it in order, so this is the second book in the series. This book included dual POV where the other one didn't, and I believe that it made me enjoy it a little bit more. I like hearing from both point of views. I like to see like the connection between them two when they're not interacting with each other. Things that they both experience, I like hearing about that from both points of view. Also, I'm gonna be looking down a little bit. I tried to like remember everything that I wanted to talk about, but I have notes. This story follows Ryan. He's new to the Vancouver Wolves hockey team, and he's trying to prove himself to his team as he's not like fully trusted by them or the fans yet. Ryan and Zoe meet in a cafe where Ryan is barely managing like filing his taxes, and Zoe helps him with ease. Like she's a tech wizard. So while Zoe's helping him, she's like kind of in a rush just to be somewhere, and Ryan's like, hey, like I'll pay you for your time, like if you could just stay and help me out, like you've really helped me out a lot, like please. So she's like, whatever, like I give you like 15 more minutes. So she's helping him, and she's like ends up helping him longer than she needed to, and she becomes like late to this place that she needs to get to. So he's like, hey, like I'm the reason that you're late, so can I just like drive you to the area? And she's like, sure, like I'm desperate, like whatever, like take me. So we then find out when he drops her off that she was late to a shelter. They have like a very strict closing door curfew policy. I will say that because of her situation, Zoe's very guarded and she doesn't trust anybody, which is reasonable and something you can expect from people that are in this position that she's in. Ryan basically takes her in and helps her get some things, takes care of her, and at first she's slow to accept everything, and it's just sweet. When I first heard about the summary of this book, I was kind of nervous because there's different, like, the power dynamic. I was just like, how is this gonna work? Got more money than her, he's got more resources, and he's taking care of her. Like, I don't really know how to feel about this. I just didn't want him to pity her or like there to be like some kind of ill intent, and there definitely wasn't. If you were worried about that coming into this book, I will say that Ryan was very generous and compassionate in helping Zoe get out of her very dangerous and tough situation. Slowly they do begin to trust each other and it blossoms their relationship, and other things go on in the book. Again, when I talk about the whole suspense and like traumatic thing, is also dealt with a little bit of like sexual assault and harassment by someone that she used to be like foster homed by. If you don't want to read about any spice, this is not the series for you. I will say that me personally, I feel like Odette's writing style when it comes to sex scenes is very like cringy to me. I don't know, I just really hate when people use the word cock. Like, I don't think that you should use that word like 15 times a page, and I just feel like she was just sprinkling that bitch in there. What happened to a good old-fashioned dick, you know? I don't know, that's just something for me. I think it just seems so much more filthy, and not in a good way. So the next book that I read was in the same series. It was The Penalty Box. This one includes marriage of convenience and some like strong obsession. Charlie and Micah are our main characters, and Charlie has had a crush on Micah for about 2 years. She's the assistant to his sports agent, Krista. So because she's had like a minor crush on him for years and he hasn't like really like noticed her in that way, there's kind of some pining there, and this book is very slow burn. So basically the story starts with Micah. He gets into a little bit of trouble with the law, and to clear his name both with the police and also the owner of his team, because he's like kind of like not in his last strike, but it just doesn't look that good for his career. I think he may have gotten into some other trouble, I don't really remember. His agent Krista comes up with the idea that he should marry the perfect girl to like rub off really good behavior on him and kind of make him seem more stable and mature. From her point of view, he has tons of money and she's in a lot of debt, so she's just like, why not? She has her own secrets about like why she owes so much money. I believe that she owes money for like school, like student loans, and also she owes someone because her brother got into some trouble, so she's trying to clear her brother's name, but like they don't have enough money. She's kind of in a bind and she's forced into the situation in a way, so the both of them benefit from this marriage of convenience. And again, this is very slow burn. And yeah, next I listened on audiobook to I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. One thing about me is if I read a memoir, I'm most likely gonna not rate it at all or give it 5 stars. I like to note when I'm reading a memoir is that someone really took the time out of their day to be vulnerable and transparent in a way that they didn't have to be. I appreciate them for that, and there's no reason for me to give less than 5 stars on someone's life story. Like, how could you judge or grade someone's experiences? If anyone is interested in listening to Jennette's story, I would highly recommend listening to it by audiobook. You can just hear the emotion and sincerity behind every word when you hear it in Jennette's voice. If you don't already know, Jennette McCurdy was a child actress. She was most popularly known for her role as Sam Puckett in iCarly, and then her own spin-off show Sam and Cat. This book was incredibly hard to listen to at times. It follows Jennette's journey and her being forced to act by her abusive mom. It was a lot. I will say there are trigger warnings for some sexual assault, eating disorders, addiction. I would even go as far to say is narcissism. It was just really eye-opening for me because, like, obviously, you know, you try not to put celebrities on pedestals because they're like normal people, just famous. And I think when I was growing up with iCarly, I think it came out when I was like 10 or 11, I just didn't conceptualize that they're actual people behind the camera. They're not like their roles. I didn't realize that they go through actual stuff, which is like now as an adult, I'm just like, wow, like of course, like most people know about a lot of like the dark shit that happens in Hollywood and just the entertainment industry in general, but we only know probably a fraction of what's going on. And to just see how I viewed Jennette McCurdy, like I loved her as a kid, to see what she was going through behind the roles that I thought she was just so funny and lighthearted. She was going through a lot of real life shit. I wrote in my reading journal, I've always loved Jennette McCurdy as an actress growing up. It was hard to hear about so many sad moments in her life when her characters were literally her exact opposite. A hard body girl that took nothing and had eating as a personality trait. Can you imagine that? Literally your mom forcing you to be a certain size, and the character that you play is like a bottomless pit. Sam was always eating, like that was like her main That was like her main personality trait. Abrasive and had a big appetite. I hate how she was taught to view her body at such a young age, and I'm happy that she found resources to help her through her eating disorders. It was very brave of her to write about her experience for the world to consume. Happy that she has the freedom to be herself and to live for herself now. This was only a glimpse of the reality of young childhood stars, and I can really see why they turn to substances and other nefarious activities. And I meant that. We all go through shit. It can really drive you to do a lot of things that are out of character and out of your norm. And I'm just really happy that Jennette found the help that she needed. So on a different note, I read High Risk Rookie by Odette Stone. It was in the same series as that I previously talked about. I didn't think that Krista was gonna get her own story, but I lived for it. Like, I love Krista. This was a forbidden romance between rookie Levi and his sports agent Krista. Levi is this like adrenaline junkie that doesn't slow his life down for anything or anybody. Krista is given the task to hunt him down and have him sign with the Vancouver Wolves, which leads her to Mexico. What she didn't account for was getting drunk and drugged and marrying Levi under the influence. Since they aren't supposed to be together, they work hard to keep their marriage a secret. And it's hard because someone like recorded this, everything that was going on, because they had babysitters the whole time while they were like drugged and drunk. It was like a misunderstanding. It's not like someone was like maliciously trying to drug her, but it happened. Drugs were around. Levi is new and like he's subject to some hazing and like basically bullying by some of the other men on the hockey team. Some of the like senior players take him in and become friends with him, and there's really just only like one guy on the team that's just like shitty to him. And later on we get more like backstory and like more explanation kind of about that. To end out this review, I just wanted to say that I really love Levi and Krista together. I just enjoyed how Levi really like stood up for Krista any chance that he got, and it was just very admirable in my opinion. I think that they belong together. Now this next book that I read, was Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston, and this is actually like my favorite book right now, like of all time, my favorite book. I didn't think it would be. I would just like to say that if you're not into middle grade fantasy, maybe you should be into middle grade fantasy and read this because it's amazing. And whether you like fantasy or not, I feel like everyone should read this book. This story follows 13-year-old Amari Peters, who is looking for her older brother Quentin, who has mysteriously gone missing. Amari lives with her mom and her older brother, and the police that are supposed to be investigating his disappearance, they automatically assume that Quentin was involved with like illegal activities. So you know what that means. Like, they don't really care to go and search for him. They just already assume like, oh, he was into something bad, so like that has to be why he's missing. Amari knows her brother's character, so she takes it upon herself to get to the bottom of why he's gone. One day, like, Amari has been in her brother's room like plenty of times, but one day she finds this briefcase in his closet that she's never seen before, and it's only for her eyes. Inside this briefcase is like his nomination for her to go to this like secret investigative bureau for kids. It's like a summer tryout, and Amari soon realizes that like she doesn't know everything there is to know about her brother. Inside this briefcase is some things to equip her a little bit to join this prestigious program that like is secret. I would just like to say this book was like so magical and fun. Like, I like the world this was set in. It was just so fun to me. I was just so incredibly happy to see someone that looks like me be like the main character in this kind of story. I didn't grow up with many, if at all, any fantasy books with a black main character, a black girl main character, and if there were, I would like to know because I'd like to read those. I'm just really overjoyed to see that the new upcoming generations have books with more representation and people that look like them in the main character role, not just supporting roles. The next book that I read was Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen. So this book follows Simi Dele, also known as Simi, which I'll call her Simi because I don't think I'm saying her name right. I listened to this by audiobook and I just don't think I'm going to give her name justice, so we will go by Simi. Simi is a mamiwata, which is a mermaid in this world. Their main job is to collect the souls of black people that die at sea and to like bless their journeys on their way back home. One day, as Simi is trying to do her job and collect someone that has just passed away, she finds a boy thrown overboard that is still alive, and she can't do any, like, she doesn't want to wait for him to die and then collect his soul. She's like, how could I let him die? And she basically gets in trouble for this because this was not, like, her main job was only to collect people that have died. So she gets in trouble because she's supposed to turn a blind eye to this guy and let him die. And she doesn't. And his name is Adekola, also known as Kola. This book also deals with some heavy topics, for example, like suicide, slavery, the afterlife. I will say that reading this and Amari in like the same like few days really made me like even more proud to be black, if that was even possible. Just to see our stories of just resilience and just, I love black people all over the world. Like, I just think that we're just so beautiful, and I hate to say like strong because that's not always like said in the best light, but we are incredibly strong and beautiful. This is a duology, I believe. I don't know if they're coming out with the third book, so I'm gonna say it's a duology. This book incorporates a lot of African spiritual systems, such as I think it's called Ifa. It's considered mythology in some areas, and some people this is actual belief system. So I don't want to disrespect anybody by calling it mythology, but there are different gods and different deities that govern different things in the world. I really enjoyed this story, and I don't think I'm doing it any justice, but I did want to just read some of what the author wrote that really... Natasha Bowen says that Black history doesn't start with slavery. For me, writing Skin of the Sea has allowed me to tell a story of Black characters from ancient empires showcasing their power and magnificence. She's obviously better with words than I am. I think of the repeating patterns that are threaded through the culture of our lands, the braided decoration of our hair, the designs on our cloth, the paths and homes in our cities. All the same, but in different sizes, repeating over and over again. Licking the dryness from my lips, I tip my head to face him. I exist to be discovered that cannot be fully explored. I suck in another ragged breath. I am ever changing yet born of the same. Some say that I lead only to amari. So that excerpt was actually from the book. It was like a riddle of sorts. She's like talking to this trickster of a god, and she gives him a riddle to figure out, and that's it. That's the little taste I'm gonna give you of the book. It was really good to me. Didn't think I was gonna like it when I came in, because I was like, oh, here goes like another Black trauma story, and it was more than that. The next book that I read was Soul of the Deep, also by Natasha Bowen. It's the second book in that same series. So I'm not going to really describe this one as much because it is the second book. Basically, it's just another story following Simi. It's like another journey. She just keeps putting herself in these positions to like save the world. And if you're into like, I don't know the difference between a quest and a journey anymore. But if you're into that, this is very action-packed and interesting. After that, I read Carrie Soto Was Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was really resisting the urge to give this 5 stars as I was reading it. I was just like, this is not something that I usually would care about and give 5 stars. I'm not gonna say it's one of my favorite books, but I just couldn't not give it 5 stars, if that makes sense. This is about Carrie Soto. She decides to leave retirement from tennis, which she announced in 1989 to re-enter professional competitions in an effort to defend her record. The plot moves back in time to follow Soto's first rise to the top, and then we come along on her grueling training as she attempts to defend her title 6 years later. Taylor Jenkins Reid really does a good job of like making you care about the characters, because I'm not gonna lie, at the beginning of the book, like maybe the first 30%, I was really not into Carrie. I was like, she's cocky, she's selfish, she takes everything for granted, especially her dad, which shout out to him. I love him. Javi, aka the Jaguar, I love him so much. He's one of my favorite characters ever. At times, I just didn't feel like she was very grateful for what she had. I don't follow any sports, and that's one of the reasons why I was really like, I don't think I'm gonna like this. I never played a sport. I'm not athletic, don't follow any kind of sports. So when I say this, you need to understand that I do not care about sports. I'm gonna say this again, I'm outside, so if y'all hear birds squawking in the background and just other nature sounds, I'm so sorry if that bothers you. It is what it is. We outside. I can't control nature. If only I could. The only tennis players that I know are Venus and Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka, and I don't watch them at all. I just know of them, and just to like read about all the training and just conditioning and just everything that goes into the sport, I appreciate so much of like what athletes have to go through more. I don't know, you hear about how much athletes make per game and what they have to do, like endorsement deals and sponsorships, and it's just like, okay, like they just get paid to do what they love. But there's so much that goes into sports, like professional level sports, that I had no clue about. For example, did y'all know that for tennis they play on different like surfaces? I don't know if I wrote it down. For example, there's like concrete, grass, clay, and there's like plenty more. And you could play differently on different surfaces. Like the ball bounces differently. You have to like anticipate where the ball is gonna go. The only tennis that I've ever actually played was like on the Wii, and that was stressful for me. So I just can't imagine doing that, and like games can last for like hours at a time. Also, this book just shines more light on how people talk about women that are older, and this lady is only like 37, which in my head is not old at all, but the aging process of women is more seen at a critical eye opposed to men, in my opinion. And this really goes to show how they talked about her on these interviews and things, like, oh my god, this old lady is coming back, like she's old and out of shape and all this stuff, and it's just like, since when is 30 old? Or 40 for that reason, like for that. I don't know. It was just crazy for me to hear. I think I didn't like Carrie because I had to come to terms with my own bias with like women that are like overly confident, because in society, women that are very confident in their abilities and are cocky in a way are seen as just like horrible and unattractive, or just too big of a personality for such a character, you know. But when, like, for example, when men throw tantrums on the field or court or whatever arena of sports that they have, it's more acceptable. If there's any kind of aggression or assertiveness in a woman, it's just seen like, why the hell is she like this? Like, what's going on? She's supposed to be taking things humbly and looking beautiful and just being graceful. And it's like, no. Carrie says fuck all that. And I really enjoyed that. Like, as I read it some more, I just grew to love her and care more about what she was going through. Fun fact about me, my minor in undergrad was Spanish, and I probably speak as good as like a 2-year-old native Spanish speaker. So I will just say that I can't speak that good as Spanish, you know what I mean? But one of my favorite quotes is in Spanish, and there's an English translation, and I'd like to read that for y'all again. But this is from Carrie's dad, Javier, which also, if y'all watched my Fourth Wing vlog, is one of my favorite names. So I was just so happy to hear that that was her dad's name. So this is in the words of her dad. It says, "Siempre supe que no hay montaña que no puedas escalar paso a paso," which means in English, I have always known there's no mountain you cannot climb one step at a time. Like, her dad, that just encapsulates so much of her relationship with her dad. Like, her dad was just so encouraging and just always there for her every step of the way. And at times I really got pissed off with her because it's like, girl, you have a living parent here that is like doing his best. Do not be rude. Do not step on him. Respect him. Treat him with respect. Sometimes I just wanted to like shake her because I'm just like, please, you have a great father in your life. I just really liked it. Like, Taylor Jenkins Reid, she knows how to write a book. It's just crazy going from like a 5-star read to like not a 5-star read. I read Neon Gods by Katee Robert, and I gave it a 2.5. This is the first book in like a 5-book series, and I hate to say it, but I'm not going to continue with the series. And I hate starting a series and not continuing it. Like, I promise if I could go back in time, I wouldn't have read this book because I just hate leaving things unfinished. But I definitely don't care about this. If you're someone that is into like Greek mythology and you're really into erotica, this is, I guess, the book for you. But I just didn't think that this was just going to be like just a sex book with like barely any plot. Like, it just didn't make sense. And I don't want to be mean, so I'm not. I'm just going to tell you about this book if you want to read it. The cover is beautiful. Society darling Persephone Demetrio plans to flee the ultra-modern city of Olympus and start over far from the backstabbing politics of the 13 houses. And the 13 is basically like the big 13 in Greek mythology. So that's Hephaestus, Poseidon, Aphrodite, Demeter, Apollo, Athena, Zeus, Eros, Artemis, Dionysus, Hermes, and Hades. But all that's ripped away when her mother ambushes her with an engagement to Zeus, the dangerous power behind their glittering city's dark facade. Everything I've ever heard about Zeus, he's just like a bad guy. Like, none of them are very like morally upright, I don't think, from like the stories that I've heard. But like, Zeus is really like, he's horrible. Like, he's terrifying. Persephone like runs away from her engagement, and she like kind of runs into the arms of Hades. And Hades is supposed to be like someone that doesn't exist in this world. No one thinks that he's still like living. You have to cross the river Styx to get to where he is, and if you cross it, there's legends and rumors about how there's like this weird sensation that goes through your body when you go through this, and like most people just don't want to cross it because, yeah, it's dangerous. Poseidon has like a sex room. Okay, if you're into exhibitionism and voyeurism, this is something you may enjoy. He has a sex room that he like basically broadcasts his sex capades in front of people, A-list people that live like, what is it, upstate? I don't know what it's called, but like they basically live on like the upper side of the city. And you know how like the elite and like billionaire rich people, they get down and they get into their dark corners of the world where they're just like dirty. They partake in this sex club, and that's really all I can tell you. I don't really know. It wasn't that good. The next book that I read was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This is my first Casey McQuiston story, and what I know about them is that they write really good books with queer representation and found family, which I'm very interested in both of those. Like, those are like buzzwords. If someone's talking about a book and they say like either of those two things, I'm like, ooh, I'm clued in. Like, I want to know. I definitely would like to read some more of their book. Is it backlist or catalog? I don't know. But I want to read some more of what Casey McQuiston has written. This book follows August Landry, a cynical pseudo-detective who finds love in a woman she meets on a subway named Jane Sue, a punk lesbian from the 1970s who has been misplaced in time and is trapped on the subway. This book was listed as romance and also sci-fi and also like a little bit of paranormal, so take that with what you will. I went in this not knowing anything about it. I thought it was just gonna be like, oh, these two people, they meet each other on their commute on the subway and they fall in love, because the cover was beautiful and I was like, why not? I heard it was like lesbian, so I was like, hey, why the fuck not? It was just interesting. I liked it. There's a scene where Jane is being like a little promiscuous on the subway, like the power went out or something like that, and she's engaging in something with someone. And all I could think about, like I'm getting in the mood, like I'm reading the book, like, you know, as someone does when they're reading a spicy scene. And I'm just like, damn, has she like washed her hands? Because I guess she like starts her day over and over again in the same like it's not always the same subway, but in the subway. And like Newark subways are like notoriously dirty as fuck. So I'm like, she be touching everything and anything on this subway. So something happened with her fingers, and I was just like, is her hands clean? Like, you don't bring no sanitizer, you don't bring no wet wipes. You just, you know, it just took me out of it. So that's one thing I had to tell y'all and warn y'all about. Like, that might ruin the scene for you. I'm so sorry if it does. Just try to ignore what I said. But I was just like, you getting spicy with her? Really? And I just really love the found family aspect of this. Like, Mila was one of my favorite characters to read. Like, I feel like I would love to be friends with Mila. I really enjoyed how Casey McQuiston wrote dialogue. Like, I just thought how the friends spoke among each other was just so funny. And to be honest, I hate to say this because August is like supposed to be like the main character, but I enjoyed everyone. Like, she was fine, but I enjoyed everyone a lot more than her. Like, literally everyone else that was in the book was way more interesting to me than her. So there's that. I just really enjoyed how the writing flowed. I feel like everyone should read this. It's really good. I liked it. Okay, y'all, I took a brief intermission, so the lighting is probably a little bit different. The sun's coming out more because it's now like noon. The next book that I read was The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This is the first book in the Wild series. This book is about Kala. She's more of like a city girl. She lives in Toronto. She attempts to reconnect with her estranged father after years of not talking. She finds herself torn between her busy life in Toronto and her budding relationship with a rugged Alaskan pilot. It was like a little funny because her and her mom, her dad actually owns the flight company that Jonah, the other main character, he works for. And her mom actually met him when he was like a pilot, and she calls them Sky Cowboys. And I just thought that was so funny. Like, it's so real because I guess they're all like pretty charming and good looking, and like they do a pretty hard and dangerous job. So I am someone that is like pretty ignorant to like geography and like a lot of different cultures and what are they, ethnic groups. I had no clue about how the livelihood of Alaskan natives, and this book this book kind of put a little spotlight on that for me. For example, some people, I don't know how to explain this, but they're in areas that were not close to the town, this very small town that had like limited supplies, so they had to have people fly them their supplies every week. So like some things they would put an order in for, like medicine or like a breathing treatment or just like basic food supplies, and they wouldn't get it until like a week later because there's like dangerous like flying, what's the word? It's like dangerous to fly at certain times. Like, they're in the mountains, it's cold, things happen. Also, I was very ignorant to like Alaska because all I know about Alaska that I've heard is that like there's 6 months of light and then there's 6 months of darkness. So I've heard that because the darkness really impacts a lot of people's like mental health and just makes a lot of people depressed, that they pay them like a stipend to live there sometimes and to work there. And that's the only thing that I like barely know about. And I don't know if that's like true or not. Like, I haven't fact checked that. But I remember like thinking like, why would anyone want to live in Alaska? Because I didn't know about the people that already lived there. And there was this one scene where Kala was like, I don't get it. Like, why? Basically the same thing. Like, why would they live here? And Jonah was like, you don't have to get it. You just have to respect it. And I respected him for saying that, because it's so true. Like, so many people have this idea of like what it means to live. And for these people, this is like their community, their family, this is where they're from, this is where everyone that they know is from. Why should they have to change what they do? Because, you know, I don't know what I'm saying, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. My legs are burning up. It got so hot, like I'm not even really in my shady spot anymore. Oh, is that a snail? Aw, he's probably dead. It's so hot. That concrete is probably burning his ass up. Damn, it's hot. I gotta hurry up. I got like 3 more books left. This shit is ridiculous. Ooh, I'm gonna have a little tan. I really enjoyed the small town environment. Like, it always just seems like every small town book that you read, everyone just really looks out for each other and they care for each other. So first impressions, I didn't really like either of them because I felt like Kala was just overprivileged and she didn't know how to do anything for herself, I felt like. And then Jonah, he made this like offhand comment about her makeup and like her luggage and her weight or something like that. And I was just like disgusted. But he redeemed himself in the end. But both of them are kind of like annoying at the beginning for me. I need to hurry up. It's really way too hot out here. I don't know what I was thinking, because when I came out here it was like 80 degrees, but then I recorded for like an hour and a half and now it's like 90 and it's too much. There was a scene, like a search and rescue scene, that reminded me of this Idris Elba movie called The Mountain Between Us, where basically these two people are trying to get back home, and their plane crashes, like this little tiny like plane crashes in the mountains, and they have to survive, and like they're the only ones that have gone through this like traumatic thing, and they bond with each other, and like it's just weird. They try to go back to their regular lives and they can't, and it's just a really good movie if you want to see the movie. I don't know why it reminded me of that, but I remember reading it and I was just like, I think it's because like I don't even know if it was in Alaska, but it just reminded me of that. I feel that K.A. Tucker had like a really good balance of humor and hope within all the painful scenes that were in the book, because it dealt with a lot of like just hurt and loss. The next book that I read was Finding Me by Viola Davis, and I gave that 5 stars. I just want to go ahead and say all of Viola's bullies. I think that Viola Davis is so beautiful inside and out, and it was just crazy for me to read how other people perceived her, but like it also wasn't, because misogynoir is a thing, which is basically like misogyny but in black. It's like surprising but not, because so many black features are just not celebrated that much in like mainstream media, and it's becoming more so now than I've ever seen in my entire like life, so that's good. Viola discussed, I have this listed here, she discussed sexualization, sexual assault, domestic violence, colorism, addiction, poverty, misogyny, misogynoir, bullying, loss, pain, racism, oppression, and more. So if those are too hard for you to read about, I probably would ask that you skip out on this book. If you feel like you can get through any of these really hard topics, I would definitely recommend reading it. You definitely get more insight on just the beginnings of really like such an amazing artist in person. Like if you've seen any role played by Viola Davis, you can just see so much of her raw emotion and conviction, and you can't help but realize when you read this book that like she's drawing from real life experiences. She's not just like making up something. She's got plenty of things to go off of to get, you know, the emotion that she needs to convey. I recognize like a lot of similarities between how Viola and her siblings are raised and how my mom and her 6 siblings are raised. Viola was born in South Carolina, but Mama and her family were born in Oklahoma. That's where we still live. Actually, fun fact, Viola Davis and my mama are the exact same age. Viola Davis is like a couple months younger than my mom, but they're the exact same age. So it was just really crazy to read, because I think they're both like the second to youngest kid. There was a scene in here that really pissed me off. Like a teacher for Viola and her sister, they called them out of class and was like, hey, like you basically need to do something about your smell. Like you don't smell good. And like didn't ask like, hey, what's going on at home? How can I be of help to you? Like, you know, like, are you okay? Like a child, I think Viola was like 8 maybe. A child does not have complete autonomy of their hygiene. So why the fuck would you not like bring this into conversation with adults? And if you can't reach the parents, maybe try to do what you can do in the limits of a school environment. It just really pissed me off, and it was from like a woman too, so I was just like, there was a more tender way you could have approached this topic. It just goes to show, there was a quote that Viola said, and it was so sad. Let me find it. She wrote, but in my mind, no one cares about the conditions in which the unwanted live. You're invisible, a blame factor that allows the more advantaged to be let off the hook from your misery. And like, she didn't tell a lie. Like, a lot of people that come from, I had like the basic foundations of hygiene. That's a privilege. They didn't have like heat, water, electricity. Sometimes they'd be going to school with like damp clothes because they had to hang it up. There's just so many obstacles in the way of like what some people might think are just like basic things that everyone should have. I mean, they are basic things that everyone should have, but basic things that everyone already is equipped with and already does have. Yeah, it's insane to read how other people were reacting to their situation. On a slightly more positive note, well, not slightly, but a more positive note, I really like her and Julius together. I feel like they really complement each other. That's her husband. I think they've been together now for like 20 or 30 years, something like that. And they're just really precious. I am so happy that they found each other. There is a scene, like not a scene, there's a quote that I wanted to read you guys that Viola wrote about a scene in How to Get Away with Murder. And I have not watched the full show, which I really plan on watching now, but she wrote, but if I took the wig off in a brutal, private moment and took off the makeup, it would force him to write for that woman. Taking off the wig in How to Get Away with Murder was my duty to honor black women by not showing an image that is palatable to the oppressor, to people who have punished the image of black womanhood for so long. It said all of who we are is beautiful, even our imperfections. And that was beautiful. I highlighted that, I made it pink. I was just like, wow. And like, I was reading some reviews and people were like, oh, her writing style, she's not a writer, blah, blah. And I'm just like, how could you read this whole book and then only talk about that? And I thought that was beautiful. She articulated things that I could never talk about. Like, I could never articulate so well. People have like masculinized and just brought down the image of Black women, and just like anyone that has like Afrocentric features. So just like her making this huge pivotal moment in national television was just, it was big. Again, that's just like another representation thing. Like, this is just another Black woman as a main character. She's like, I think Viola talked about it, like she's sexual, she's got a man on the side, like she's desirable, and that's not something you always see, especially not as like a main character. Like, a lot of Black women are just used as like comedic relief, and it was just really nice to read Viola's take on this. It's the way I thought I was recording and I wasn't recording. Anyway, the next book that I read was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt, and I gave this 5 stars. This is considered literary fiction, and I'm not like someone that would gravitate towards this genre, but if there are more books that are similar to this, please comment them down below and I will definitely read them. I love this book so much. This is literally one of my favorite all-time favorite books right now. Like, I keep saying right now, but one of my all-time favorite books, like, ever. This follows Tova. She's a widow. She's recently widowed, and she also lost, not recently widowed, well, I think she lost her husband like a year ago. Anyway, she also lost her son maybe like 20-30 years ago. He was really young. He was 18. She doesn't have closure about the situation. Like, this was her only child, and there's just a lot of things that she still doesn't know about how he passed away, and like who was involved and who was in his life at the time. So she finds all these things out, and it's also in the point of view of like 3 people. There's this guy Cameron, there's Tova, and then there's the octopus. His name is Marcellus, and Marcellus, he's like the funniest character ever. Like, he's one of my new favorite characters. He's brilliant, he's cunning, he's witty, he's funny. Like, all the funny moments, I feel like Marcellus was talking. Like, he's just hilarious. Like, I definitely don't want to ever underestimate like aquatic life in my life. Oh, this is like the big setting is like an aquarium, because Tova is like the cleaning lady there, and that's how she knows Marcellus. And yeah, I won't say too much more about that, because I feel like if I say anything else, it might spoil. But it's really good. Marcellus is kind of like grumpy, but like he's a big old softie. And then small town, because the main area that they live in, I forgot where they live. Is it California? They live in a small area that's like kind of like lake houses and just like beach vibes. So if you're into that, this is a good book to read. And the last book that I want to talk about is Amari and the Great Game by B.B. Alston. This is the 2nd book in the Special Investigation series. B.B. is coming out with a 3rd book. It's like in February of 2024. I'm so pissed off. Like, I need this now. And it's amazing. I'm not going to really talk about the book, but Amari she's kind of reminds me of Simi and Skin of the Sea. I read them around the same time, like probably from the same week. So like, they had so many similarities to me, which is weird, because like they're not the same story. But both of them feel like it's on their shoulders to save the world and just like be the hero of their own story. I gave this 5 stars. I was gonna give it 4 at first, but there was no reason for me to not give it. I had like no problems with it. Like, there was nothing bad I could say about this book. You definitely need to read the 1st book so we could talk about the 2nd book, because I feel like this is not going to encourage anybody to read this one, but the 1st one was amazing. And this just, I didn't expect anything from this. Like, the 2nd book is like, I just thought it was going to be fine, but it was amazing as well. So I'm really excited for the 3rd book. Alright, you guys, that is the end of this wrap up. This is part 1. Stay tuned for part 2 if you want to see more of the books that I read this July. Thank you so much for watching the video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.